Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you coming. This is a really large crowd here today. This will be great. So this is a long session. I don't know how long we'll be able to go, but the session notes did not say audience interaction, but I do want to include the audience in the interaction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of introduce the topic, introduce the panel, or have them introduce themselves. I have some pre-planned questions that hopefully they'll be happy to answer, and then we can open up the room for any other questions or comments. Okay? All right, so thank you so much. Sustaining the workforce across the asset lifecycle, attracting, developing, and retaining talent in construction. So welcome again. So we know that the construction, I think anyway, the construction industry is at a pivotal moment. We're seeing historic levels of infrastructure investment while at the same time facing a workforce challenge that spans the entire asset life cycle, from planning and design through to operations and renewal of those assets. At the same time, technology is rapidly reshaping how we work through automation, AI, digital twins, and data-driven decision-making. So the question in front of us isn't just how to attract more people into the industry, it's how to design, develop, and sustain a workforce that can support the infrastructure needs of today and the future. So we have today, in today's panel, leaders from across the industry, academia, and workforce development, and we are hoping that through the questions we'll be exploring some practical and forward-looking strategies to address this challenge. So I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, and we'll start here with Anand. If you could each briefly share your role and a perspective you bring to the workforce in this industry, and maybe one thing you're currently focused on related to talent or workforce development.
Thank you. My name is Anand Steven. I am based out of New Jersey. I'm a licensed civil engineer in New Jersey and in California. I have designed infrastructure projects on both coasts, and I've taught some courses across civil engineering and some in sociology. I work for Bentley Systems as a technical account manager, helping various DOTs connect their needs to the digital tools that are available. As far as workforce development, I engage with students at high school level, showcase technology, and also, to be honest, I learn a lot from them. They've kind of opened my eyes in ways I didn't expect. So I'll share some of those anecdotes as well as we move on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brina Galello. I'm the Director of Business Development for a firm called Espousal Strategies. We're a DBE firm headquartered in Portland, Oregon, with offices in Seattle and Houston as well as DC. And we specialize in really the people part of the project. So we love working on policy related to workforce, procurement strategy, as well as public involvement and engagement on some of these big projects that we have. And workforce is pretty much all we're thinking about right now. We have $80 billion worth of light rail coming to the city of Seattle through Sound Transit, which is really exciting. We have a huge bridge replacement between Oregon and Washington called the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. And so it's all our region can talk about. And so I'm really excited to share a bit more about some of the policies and programs we're putting into place to really help connect folks up to those jobs and make sure that they have a great job on those projects, which can take 20 years plus to build. And something that I'll just leave with that I think everybody I work with really believes in is, at the end of the day, if all we've built is a bridge is that's it, we failed. What's really important is that everyone should be able to look at a project and go, I know someone who works on that, I've seen my community benefit, and that's something that we really try to bring to each thing we do. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Tim Becker. I'm a programs chair at the Del Webb School of Construction at Arizona State University. As I was listening to your introduction, I would also add that before I had this job, I spent 10 years with Kiewit in talent development, people training. So very glad to be here today. You'd ask one thing I'm focused on, and we've launched an online Bachelor's of Science in Construction Management at Arizona State, and what I'm really working on right now is opportunities for pathways from community colleges, and I really believe strongly in the population that is going to be at community colleges for whatever working reasons or financial reasons, and upon their graduation, moving them into an online program with construction management. And I think it's going to change a lot of lives, and it's going to create opportunities for workforce development that we wouldn't otherwise have as an opportunity. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bobby Gilmore. I work for a firm called Kennedy Jenks. We're primarily an engineering firm for the water wastewater industry. I am also up in Seattle. I've been there with them for about 13 years. I'm a construction manager and resident engineer primarily on some of the largest wastewater treatment projects in the region. For me, perspective I'm bringing is I do a lot of student engagement with the local universities through ASCE, and I'm also in the part of my career where I'm starting to manage and hire people. So one of the things that I'm also really focused on in terms of the workforce development is not only finding new talent, but more importantly, retaining what we have, because I think that is also a lost art that we're not focusing on with our mid-level staff. So excited to be here.
Thank you very much. I don't know if these black microphones work or not. It might be easier than passing something around.
Test. Seems fine.
Okay. Just trying to save you some energy, that's all. Okay, so let's frame the big picture here. As I mentioned in the opening statement, we are sort of facing some historic infrastructure investment alongside a workforce shortage, and some may say it's a severe workforce shortage. But is it just a labor shortage, or is it somehow a workforce design problem? That makes sense? I see Bobby nodding. Oh, okay.
I'll kind of just start. I think it is a mix of both. I do work with quite a few universities in the area, and at least on the engineering side, the class sizes are getting smaller. In Washington, one of the big issues that we have is we have every giant tech corporation you can imagine who pays more than civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. So at least on that side, we are seeing a true shortage when we're not getting students through the programs and into the career paths that I need, mainly in the municipal side of the world. And then I do think it's also a workforce design problem. I do feel part of the retaining problem is you have to train the future, and you have to make sure that they feel supported, they know what's next, that our senior staff are not just retiring without transferring their knowledge down and making it a continuous process that just keeps the workforce sustainable and educating every day, because we should be learning every day and we should be training every day, and that can often be lost when we're all so busy.
I mean, we aren't seeing it so much at Arizona State, but I think a lot of universities just overall are seeing fewer enrollments, just due to our demographic changes of people having, less members of your family, and so overall, we are going into a situation where we just have less people in college, less people entering the workforce, and we talk about robots changing that, but that's going to be a long time, and even AI, we think for some time. So I think it has to do with explaining the value of civil engineering and construction management, and that not everyone has to work at Google or SpaceX, that there are meaningful, impactful work that we can do in the infrastructure area. And we kind of joke about PowerPoints, everybody wants one, but not in their backyard. sort of the same thing as everybody wants other people's kids to be electricians and pipe fitters, but not my daughter, not my son. So I think there's still some work around, and I think there's been a lot of good work done in this. The last 10 years, NCCR and a lot of other people have done a great job, AGC, Builders USA, these things like promoting construction, promoting trades. But I think there's still work to do at the cocktail parties and different things like that, where parents are talking about where their kids are going to college and what their kids are majoring in. So education still.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bobby had mentioned one of the words she used was sustainable. So I want to ask, what does a sustainable workforce look like when you're talking about even just the full asset life cycle, like from planning, design, construction, operations, et cetera? I don't know if one of you others want to respond to that, or
Yeah,
okay.
sure. But also going back to the question about, I also think it's the previous question. I think it's a mix of both in terms of retention. Personally, some people, my own story, some people said that was a stupid decision to go back to civil. So I started off, trained as a civil engineer, worked in a startup in the software sector, but then ideals got better of me and I went back to civil. So that maybe is an outlier, but what I want to connect it to is where I think we could all collectively do better is place faith, a little bit more faith in our youngsters, the high school kids. They know and want to do a lot better than we think. They're like lost in TikTok. And here's a story. I was doing outreach at a high school robotics program, not civil engineering. So I went with my fancy tablet to show them what digital twins are and so on. Of course, that was useful, but this high school kid, she immediately zoomed into a local area where we had a sinkhole problem. So she went to first principles, a problem that we were facing locally, and tried to tackle that. So this long story, what I'm trying to get at is that if we can place more faith in young people, they do want to solve real problems, and tailor our programs both on the academic side and also on the industry side to that, I think it will be really fruitful. Of course, these are anecdotes, not like mass research numbers. So that's on the side of whether it's a workforce or a design thing. Segueing that into what does a sustainable workforce look like? I think if people feel like they're solving real problems that makes impact to their community, they're willing to take a hit on some of the income or financial side. But if they start to feel like they're taking a hit and simply pushing paper, why would I do civil engineering? I'd rather work for Wall Street, right? So then we start losing people on that side. That's some of my ideas.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that, just building on what my fellow panelists have said too, I think for me, when I think about a sustainable workforce, my brain goes back to what are the systems in place to help support those folks? How are we ensuring that we have strong partnerships across academia, across our public agencies, even private sector, to be able to ensure that a kiddo, one, is going to be able to see people in that industry in the first place, right? You have to know what something is, and you have to know someone who does it to be interested in it. I did not know what urban planning was as a kid. That's what my background's in. I didn't wake up one morning in 6th grade and go, man, I really want to be an urban planner. Nobody does that. But thankfully in college, I had somebody who I just got connected with at a job. And even after I dropped out, they continued to reach out. They mentored me. And when I came back to school, that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I graduated in. And so even just within that, there's a lot in that, right? It's exposure to something. It's somebody you trust. It's somebody who's a mentor who stays in touch with you, and people supporting you throughout the entire process. Talking a bit too about that sustainable piece, I think that when we think about the life cycle, one of the challenges we run into is the work that you need at the beginning of a project versus the end, right? It's different. And so how can we think through from a systems perspective if we know all of our projects are in different stages, right? If we know this light rail project is towards the beginning and is looking for different design skill sets, but this one is at the end looking in construction, how can we help kids be able, and folks of all ages, be able to get connected up to that, and maybe they're able to get connected up with different projects, learn throughout the way, and also to have a larger systems approach to training and to development. One of the things I really appreciate about King County Metro and Sound Transit up in the Seattle area is that they recognize that they have some shared workforce needs. So they do a lot of shared workforce training, and that's also able to stretch their assets, their funding, their dollars, and we're stronger when we work through some of these things together. I think that that's also something that we can see in terms of those public-private partnerships as well, recognizing that we need things like drone operators across both public and private projects. So how can we be able to, again, have the systems in place to ensure that folks are able to have continuous work and that they're able to continuously learn throughout the course of the project, and we're able to always make sure that there's a place for them to plug in because we're able to think from that larger systems perspective.
Well, that's really great. And I know when we all met before we came here today to talk about this panel, and somebody brought up, and it might have been you, Bree, I don't remember exactly. So my question coming out of that conversation was, what policy or contracting changes would make it easier to integrate interns, apprentices, and early career professionals into publicly funded work?
So I will say, I work a lot with King County. They're my main client. And they actually put it in the contractor's construction documents that you will have X amount of apprentices, priority hires, women, minority, and it's a utilization rate based on the project hours. And some of them are goals, and some of them are requirements, and the requirements have liquidated damages. And so it really does force contractors to look at themselves and say, we need to prioritize hiring a few extra apprentices. And I'll tell you, every contract or change order I've ever negotiated, we don't argue about the apprentice hours. We will give that to you. Because we want to encourage it. We want to make sure that the trades are going to be sustainable, continue their workforce and journey out. The one issue, though, I see on our side is we don't do that to our consultants and our design engineers. 100%. And we get really finicky if it's a very complicated design. We don't want to bring on a brand new intern engineer or someone who just graduated. We want to put in the mid-levels because we want to get it done faster. But in reality, that's not helping us sustain the workforce and keeping us going, and we're not training the future of our industry. And so I would love to see the owners kind of push back on the consulting firms a little more and say, we force this on our contractors, you can do the same. Like, put in an intern, put in an E1 or an E2, and it doesn't have to have liquidated damages. I know when money gets involved, things get complicated, but it would help encourage a lot of the consulting firms to start digging deep and saying, we need to start training the future and making sure that our designs and that knowledge is like being passed along through the generations.
Yeah, absolutely, and like, again, going back to like maybe a personal story, but I like to connect it to my life to see how it all relates. So about 20 years ago, when I'm starting design, I had an incredible mentor, two incredible mentors. I goofed up on a super elevation calculation. No surprise, so made a mistake. But the beauty of that situation was my mentor said, Dale, like he said, go pour a cup of coffee, sat at a table. He spent a good 45 minutes going over the stuff. I felt embarrassed, that's whole thing aside, but I was really blessed to have 45 minutes of this senior engineer's time. Now, fast forward almost 20 years back, before coming to Bentley, like, I wanted to pay it forward, but I cannot, right, because of the billability pressures, exactly what you mentioned. Also, ironically, technology has improved so much that, which is good, we need that there are buttons, literally, to do those calculations. But that knowledge transfer, those 45 minutes or so of sharing a coffee and doing that calculation is lost because he got it from his mentor, he was able to pass it on. That's a serious loss, and I think one mechanism is exactly like what you described, like build it into some contract mechanism there. Why this is important, if you connect it to some survey, recent studies that I've done, by 2030, there's an estimate that 1 in 3 civil engineering positions will go unfilled. That is a staggering number. Now, add that on top of the number of people who are going to be 65 and over in the US is about 20%. So that's what we're going to experience, what people are calling a silver tsunami, right? So I think that is a mechanism that would really help.
I think you need to build into the contract that you can work till you're 70.
I do want to tack on about a little bit more about their procurement strategies. Do we have any folks in here that regularly work on contracts or procurements? Maybe just a quick show of hands. If not anybody, it's okay. Okay. So I ask this because I think it's an important part of the project and the process. So some of the things we're seeing, and just to build on what Bobby's sharing in terms of some of it on the contract side, we are seeing more clients build in requirements for internship programs. The Interstate Bridge Replacement actually has an internship program that all of the consultant teams can participate in, whether they're a prime, whether they're a DBE, and we even help them with project level onboarding, we help them with programming, things like that. And I think that's important because it really helps show that intentionality of both the Oregon and Washington Departments of Transportation to really connect these opportunities directly onto these contracts on these projects. Like at the end of the day, like your budget really does show where your values are. So I really think that that's critical. And then on the contracting side, some of the other strategies we've seen, and I actually want to shout out Kiewit and Stacy Whitbeck, they've also done a lot of mentorship built into how they work with their small business partners and their certified firms. These are things like, you know, mini prime programs where a smaller business can actually prime a task order and get that experience, which means their workforce gets that experience, as well as opportunities to learn skills where maybe there's not as many people who know how to do that. A big thing that comes up in the Northwest, we got a bunch of water, it's very lovely, but it's very hard to build over. So there's not a lot of people who do like underwater diving and things like that. So we have folks who actually are partnering with our small businesses and our DBE firms to be able to actually show them and their workforce how to do those tasks and be able to build out their resume. And that's great, right? That's economic development in the region. That's people learning more skill sets. All of that benefits a community and benefits a project. And so I think that when we think through the contract strategies, I know it's a little wonky, but it's those kinds of things that really can make a difference, and also get the community excited, right? Like it's awesome when you have a project and go, wow, like we were able to teach a lot of new skills, and now those people can go to other projects in our region, and we're going to be able to see that. And we've seen that in Portland. One of our folks actually who went through that mini prime program, they are a Black-owned construction firm called Raymore Construction. They were able to do that work with Stacy Whitbeck and TriMet, and they are now priming $1 billion project called the Rose Quarter Project in Portland. That is such a celebration, and that is what can happen when we think about workforce, when we think about procurement as economic development, we think about it as intergenerational wealth building. And so even though we talk about contracting strategy, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in people's lives.
That's very powerful. Thank you. Okay, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about workforce development in a technology-driven era. Okay, so we know automation, AI, digital twins, and really bottom line data is really critical, and it's becoming even more prevalent. So what do you think in terms of workforce development? What are the capabilities that are going to really matter and that people should be working toward gaining that skill today?
Maybe I can start this one. So I'm on a funded research project from the Construction Industry Institute, and we were looking at the role of the frontline supervisor, the foreperson, 15 years from now, and what skills would that person need to be successful in 15 years. And it's no surprise, I mean, the research came out, it's a data-driven job. Being a foreperson is a high-tech job. I would say it is today, but it will be. So if someone says, I want to be in a high-tech job, your answer should be, great, be a pipe fitter foreman, be a welder foreman.
Yes.
That is a high-tech job. Yeah. And so as I recruit construction management students with parents, I like to use the mantra that it's high tech, it's high pay, and it's a high impact on society. And so I think really communicating to students and parents the amount of technology that construction is now, and getting into robotics and drones, and you like playing video games, great. It's called virtual design and construction, or digital delivery. So I think there's a lot more attractive technology, I would say, the last 10 years than the prior 50 that will attract the next generation if they know it's there. Sometimes it takes them getting to mechanical engineering first, and then I save them into construction management, but those kinds of things.
Absolutely. I think also, ironically, as technology is advancing, you need to become not just an engineer, but like a digital builder, a digital constructor as well. So the level of accuracy of the models is increasing tremendously. Simple drawings cannot meet that requirement. Have to start thinking about how it's put together in the field physical, in like, so those 3D models with the increased level of transparency that's there now is very similar to what's being constructed in the field. So that's an interesting development that's happened.
Yeah, I think the TxDOT presentation, the first thing this morning, if you had a chance to see it, I thought it was excellent in terms of how they're adopting digital delivery. And they've just, in my opinion, just scratched the surface, right? There's lots and lots and lots to do. So, yes, we touched on young people and how technology might interest them and get them into the industry. What about people who are in the industry, possibly feeling like they're getting left behind? What can we do to continue to engage them and get them upskilled or interested in it at a minimum in technologies?
I've answered this question. It's gotten me in trouble with my supervisors. So my question to them, so in civil engineering, often as people progress through their career, they'll be like, oh, it's been 15 years since I touched CAD, or it'll be like, oh, it's been 25 years since I touched CAD, showing like that's the badge of honor, right? But really, then my question to them is, have you shopped on Amazon? Can you shop on Amazon? Most of them will say yes, and now with more increasingly cloud-based technologies, a lot of the processes during design phase is transparent and available on the cloud through a browser. So the barrier to entry is a lot lower. So that's part A from an engineer of records perspective. Also, he or she is often living in the dark during project delivery. They don't know what's going on, but they're signing and sealing. It's their name, their license on the line. Now, with everything if the model's on the cloud, and if there's a digital twin during the design process, it's transparent, and taking an empathetic view of the EOR, even though they are the top dog of the project, for it to being transparent, the project delivery makes a lot of sense, and there's a motivation for them to get into the browser, look at the models and the deliverables that are part of it. I think the combination of those two will be a driver for existing senior professionals to embrace technology, just like they shop on Amazon, right?
And I would say, so we had this on our project. We had a very similar situation where the contractor was like, let's use a Bluebeam session for review comments for the 60 to 90% design. And our EOR was livid, and he was like, I've always used a spreadsheet and hand wrote my notes and scanned them and sent them. And it was rough, but it took us a couple of weeks, and we got him some training. And we did it, it wasn't an individual, like you're being called out. We did it with the contractor, all the consultants, all the subcontractors. The trainer came from the contractor side, but it was like, this is important because this is a collaborative location. It's all on the cloud, so it updates in real time. You don't have to worry about, did someone email something and it didn't get incorporated properly, because we just dealt with that previously. And we kind of just all sat down in a group and said, this is why we're doing this, how it benefits, this is how to use the tools, and did a step-by-step tutorial. We recorded it, and it changed a lot of the EOR's decision about this is a great deal. It's expedited the design process. It's helped us stay more clear, consistent, and I think that was one of the things this morning that the TxDOT was saying was standardization. It helped us standardize a lot because we're all working off the same documents. So that's part of the upskill of, I know we're all moving fast, but it was like a 2-hour training where we all sat together, everyone got to ask questions, and it has made a world of difference 2 years later when we instituted 4 other work packages. Everyone is calmer, it's a great smooth process, and that's part of the teaching a new technology, but doing it in a way that's not calling somebody out for you should have known how to do this. You're the engineer of record. It was, hey, we're all growing together, technology's changing constantly, but we're gonna do it as a group, and that really helps make everyone feel more comfortable, and benefited us so much in the end. So it's
Right, so that long-term ROI, which wasn't immediately obvious, turned out to be good. You saved time. You ultimately saved a lot of time, and you got to use the engineer of record in more valuable ways.
And I also think there's a qualitative aspect to it as well, because if you, I have a lot of you are friends, even sign and seal myself, but when your deliverable is not transparent, they're spending a lot of sleepless nights, not knowing exactly where the state of the project is, and how many issues have been resolved, to what level it's been resolved, and then finally one day they have to wake up and go through and sign and put their name on it. I know there's insurance that backs all that, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if it is more transparent, I think that's a qualitative human aspect that technology brings to the project delivery as well.
So let's talk a little bit more about retention and sustainability in the workforce. I know we've, just over the last, let's say, 30 years or so, we've made progress attracting women in underrepresented groups. Are we retaining them, and can we do more? Bree, you want to pick up on that one? She was nodding the hardest.
I was nodding hard because my partner and I are planning to have kids, and we've gone, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? I think this is a conversation that comes up with pretty much every project we're on, and I'm sure it comes up in a lot of projects folks are on too. And whether it's childcare or even like elder care and dependent care, like that one's coming up a lot too, right? We have a lot of folks that are aging. And so, I think that thinking through from a policy perspective, some of the things that's come up on some of the projects we've had is talking about things like childcare really early on. Port of Seattle actually is looking at doing a childcare pilot where they're going to have childcare on one of their sites. They especially have some really specific issues because a lot of their employees need 24-hour options, which is a huge issue. In a previous lifetime, I did community development, and I will say early learning is really hard to fund. It is really hard to get licensed and put into projects. But there are a couple people who are, thinking about that as part of their overall operations and how they serve community. We've also seen folks do adaptive reuse of certain buildings that might be near a project site, seeing if maybe they can set up childcare as part of that. So that way folks who are coming to the site are able to access that. And I think also too, having really early conversations about it with folks. When we're thinking about a project and we're thinking about getting it started and moving it forward, what are the needs of that workforce? Do folks need childcare? Is it transportation because the site's really hard to get to? Is it access to, things like rental assistance or something like that, especially if it's, focusing on helping folks get into some of these industries? We also, I think that speaks to with our paid apprenticeship programs, making sure that this is extended for all folks on a project. And then I will also say too, thinking about just the culture part of it, a lot of this is organizational culture too. Like, are you at a workplace where if you have an aging parent, for example, you feel like you have the support you need to be able to have that flexibility and take care of them? And I think that's a really important question. Like, if we want to retain people, we have to make sure that we have those supportive policies in place. And some of it's just that simple. It's like, hey, how can we work with our HR to make sure that we have flexibility? Especially if you have somebody that you really want to keep because you've put so much into them and they give so much to the organization. I will also mention, just from a high cost of living area standpoint, Seattle is an area that is definitely expensive to live in. I have my neighbors across the way do daycare. They spend $2,500 a month for daycare. I was talking to my colleague based in DC, and he said their decision was, do they buy a house or do they have children? They chose to have kids, and they spent $50,000 on childcare 1 year. It is not good. It's not like amazing childcare. It's like a place where their kids can go. And so I say all of this to say, one, public-private partnerships, and two, thinking about these creative strategies early on, like we are smart, talented people, and I know that we've got so many answers and we have that in our communities. And so again, having these conversations early, getting strategic about funding, maybe it's not something a DOT can fund or, a wastewater utility can fund, but there could be somebody else with that access to that. And so that's where we also think more creatively about these things, again, in these systems and in these assets, because if you stand up a childcare facility on a project, no one in your community is going to be complaining about keeping that around. Like, they will figure out how to keep that thing funded. So just to say all of that, I think it's policies, it's organizational culture. And I think, again, thinking in that systems perspective, how can we get creative? How can we work together? We're better when we speak together.
I just want to add, I feel very fortunate. My company's about 500-ish people, and we have a pretty tight-knit work culture. And part of that is I have a coworker. I got her hired through ASE, actually. And her and her husband wanted to start a family. And they had multiple kids in a short amount of time. And same thing, Seattle's expensive. Do you have kids? Do you buy a house? And they chose, can we move to the East Coast? And she still have a job. She works 20 hours a week still. And she was given that opportunity from KJ because she is a super valuable employee, right? All these people are valuable. We want to keep them. We want to retain them. And my company was willing to make it work. And she flew out, she won us a project through an interview because her resume was amazing. She's also an amazing speaker. And they took a chance on her and said, you are worth keeping, you are worth finding a way to make this work. And I found that incredibly powerful. And it's also helped a lot of the other younger women in our group. I found out, I think last week, we have 4 women currently on maternity leave on various projects. And the rest of the offices came together to help cover the work. And unfortunately, time was not staggered. They were all gone at the same time. Wow. And we're going to have another 3 go out.
What's in your water?
It's not just in Washington. It's all of our offices. But it was really cool to see how we share work across the company to make sure things are covered. Because we do care about our clients, but we want to care about our people and our coworkers. And it's a huge culture shift. And I know it hurts some people who had to take on the extra workload. It's already hard enough. But it makes a world of difference because now these women, I know they're going to come back. They love their jobs. They're passionate. And then it's also encouraging for other women in the industry that can see, oh, my company can support this. It's worth it. And then you get cute kid photos at the end of it, too. So it's a win-win for everybody. But I do agree, it's a culture shift because I know that it's still very much... It feels like a male-dominated industry. I think we're closer to a pretty good mix now. But you don't have to make special accommodations for everybody, but sometimes it is worth making some adjustments to the work schedule. And honestly, it can benefit everybody because trying to hire and replace somebody is very difficult versus if you can retain them and work with them to keep that consistency on our projects too.
I might just add something as simple as mother's rooms. We're seeing that more and more in corporate facilities. And, no one would think about a mother's room on a job site, but that's exactly what we have to have if you want to make it accommodating. And I think you already mentioned daycares, but at Kiwa they're really trying to solve on a major industrial project that's an hour away from civilization, and you're on a bus to the job site, and you're a field engineer and you're assigned there. And how do you really accommodate that with somehow the daycares aren't open when construction starts? So there's no subsidy that's going to help that. They're not there. So trying to be really innovative, particularly on big jobs, like the light rail work in Seattle would be a case of it. That you can actually support a daycare where the mother can actually be in the trailer down from where the kid is, and in the event that there's nursing or there's a problem, you aren't 2 hours away. But it takes very innovative contractors, and I think clients can have a big role in setting expectations that they want that, and that it's acceptable to include the cost of those kind of provisions in the contract so that you can retain those type of people. Because in the end, if you can't find daycare, what choice do you really have?
Yeah.
But if you can solve that major problem, then you'll find more people willing to stay. Because again, they want to work.
And then also thinking about developing young people. How perfect is it? You have these little kids that are around this stuff all the time. They're interested in it. They love it. Honestly, that was me growing up. My dad just, took me to every job site, and I loved it. So thus I became an engineer. Okay, maybe we have this opportunity to sort of open up the floor for questions or comment.